All right, one last look at your traffic and weather for your ride-in on this Monday morning. A couple accidents to report. One at the 12th Street extension near Frank Street. Another one at I-20 eastbound and I-26. And another one at Sparkleberry Lane and Hunt Cliff Drive. Today's high, 95. Tomorrow, same. 96 on Wednesday. Currently 81 here in downtown Columbia. That's your traffic and weather for your Monday here on the game. Oh, 9 o'clock on your Monday morning. Welcome in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you. Jack Veltri currently parking his car. He'll be in here in a moment. Hey, look, we all have those kind of Mondays, right? We're cutting a little bit close. I was late leaving the house this morning, so it's a start to a short week for probably a lot of you with July 4th coming up on Saturday. So imagine a lot of you like us here at the radio station, programming note, will be out on Friday. So short week this week, only Monday through Thursday. Believe it or not, Wednesday is July 1st. We are going to enter the second half of 2026 coming up on Wednesday, and some really cool stuff happening on Wednesday as well. Of course, you know that is the official start date of South Carolina's new Nike contract, and we are going to be out at Traditions, Gamecock Traditions coming up on Wednesday from 9 until 12 and 3 until 6. So Jay Phillips will be there later in the afternoon, but we'll be out there in the morning from 9 until 12 to officially kick off the South Carolina Nike era. That's at Gamecock Traditions at 5134 Sunset Boulevard over there in Lexington, across the street from the Target Shopping Center over there. So come by and hang out this Wednesday morning as we officially usher in the new Nike era that hopefully can resonate with a lot of success, which unfortunately we haven't had a lot of that in these past couple of years for most Gamecock sports, with of course the exception of Gamecock women's basketball and softball making the postseason the past couple of years as well. Jack, happy Monday. How are we doing today?
Good morning, man. It's been a busy morning already so far. I woke up probably like 30-something minutes ago, a little bit before 8:30, and then as soon as I got up, checked my phone, and saw a kid committed for baseball, so I was typing that up for the next 10, 15 minutes, and then getting ready, and then getting over here was also a little bit slower than I thought. I was sitting waiting in some traffic. My keys fell down the black hole, and so we're here. So that is why I'm a minute or two behind.
It's all good. Listen, I've been there plenty of times. It's one of those things when you're rushing, things tend to go wrong more. You drop your keys, I'm really bad about because I always fill up like a thing of water. Of dropping that, spilling it everywhere. Okay, got to pick that up, got to clean that up, whatever it may be. Then you get in your car, then you're in traffic, and it's taking longer. On my way in this morning, there was an accident right there at the I-26 eastbound connector, so everybody's going slow through there, and it's a very much a Monday thing. But you know what? It's a short week. Your birthday's at the end of this week, so there's reasons to be excited.
Hell yeah, there are definitely reasons to be excited. So it's going to be a great week here. How was the weekend?
Good. Considering how much travel I've done in the past couple of weekends, we just chilled out. We like to just especially on nice days, go for walks on walking paths or nature trails and stuff like that. So did a little bit of that on Saturday, but for the most part, that was pretty much all we did in terms of getting out and about.
Nice. My weekend consisted of packing because I move out in 16 days.
Okay.
I think. Yeah.
So have we found a place?
So not yet, because it's just we've kind of been going back and forth about what we want, like whether we want like a rental home. We're not buying a home. That's just out of the question right now. In a few years, for sure.
Yeah, takes time.
Yeah, we're looking to rent a home, maybe do a townhome, maybe do an apartment, but we're pretty much settled on this point of doing a townhome. Like, I went to tour a place on Friday after we got off air, and then I've got 2 more tours later on today that I'm going to look at out in the area around here. So hopefully by the end of the week we have an answer. But yeah,
it's good. It's good to have a place to go when you have to move out of your other place.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. Yeah, I mean, my move out date's July 15th, so it's like it's coming up quick. So yeah, I spent most of this weekend packing. I watched the Yankees get their butts kicked all weekend by the Red Sox, so that was fun. I will say, I feel like I'm indirectly responsible for bringing out the old Mike Uva, not the corporate Mike, the version of Mike before corporate Mike. Yep. Because last night, of course, I don't know if anyone saw, but he trolled me last night on Twitter with his little post about the Red Sox sweeping the Yankees. So I'm happy to see Mike has been brought out from the wild. That is a rare sight these days.
Nobody has gotten more use out of that one photo of you from the kickoff party.
Yeah,
with steel hands,
like 4 years ago.
I think that was actually the day that I met you.
Yeah, I know. Oh God, that photo is. It's so bad, but it's so funny because it's like it's literally playing into his cards right there. Yeah. Just looking at my phone, blank face on my blank expression, and then he's just.
Yeah. Since Mike's gotten his new job at Coastal, he's been a little.
He's had to pull back.
Yeah, you got to be more buttoned up. Not as much poking fun at Clemson fans and things like that. But when it comes to Yankees Red Sox, old Mike did come out last night. Yes. I did see that.
I was. Yeah, as bad as the Yankees played, I'm glad to see Mike came out of the woodworks for that. That was good to see.
We'll talk some Major League Baseball later on the show, get into our future headline predictions and how wrong both of us were on those fronts. Got plenty of college football to talk about. We'll get into Brad Crawford's CBS predicted wins and losses, not only for South Carolina, but for the entirety of the SEC that he put out the other day. But we are 68 days away from kickoff, and we're going to talk about the number 68, which brings back this memory that I think a lot of people enjoy.
Definitely look into the sun. It's a fake by the Gamecocks. Melvin Ingram left side. He's running across the 40, 45. Georgia territory inside the 30. Big Melvin inside the 15. 10. Touchdown Carolina. Touchdown Melvin Ingram. Are you kidding me? Unbelievable.
68 yards for Melvin Ingram on a fake punt against Georgia back in 2011, helping South Carolina pick up the 45-42 win in one of the wildest games in the history of that rivalry. And it's one of those things like, man, you didn't realize somebody that big could run that fast. And that is, I mean, it's not the best play in South Carolina history, but it's definitely one of those that gets brought up quite a bit. If you were talking like a top 10, I think a lot of people might include that one in there.
Yeah, let me see this. So, again, I did not grow up rooting for South Carolina. So
Melvin Ingram's a big boy.
Yeah.
He was moving.
That's holy crap. He kind of looks like a modern day, like, trying to think of, like, NFL running backs. Kind of, like, gives me a little bit of, like, LT vibes. Just a little bit of a bigger guy. If you didn't tell me what position he played or what the sequence was there, I would have thought he's a running back.
Yeah.
Like that's how big that guy is. So he moves pretty quick for a defensive for an edge rusher there.
Where number 6 makes you look bigger too. As a defensive lineman.
Yeah, it does make you look bigger. So that also helps. But yeah, I mean, he was moving. So, and man, a game like that, 45-42, you say, I mean, that's the difference right there. So
the reason I bring that up, again, fake punt, which was critical in picking up that win against Georgia back in 2011. For as much as we talk about the special teams prowess and Beamer ball and all that kind of stuff, I'm racking my brain. When was the last time South Carolina had a successful fake punt? Do you remember?
I'm trying to think.
I don't think we had any last year, did we?
No, I don't think so. There's definitely
a lot of bad ones.
There's definitely some from this era.
There's some from this era, but
that's what I'm saying. There's been some bad ones, like 2024 against Ole Miss, like that game.
Yep.
God, that was awful. There's definitely some out there. The one I'm thinking of is, and I think this may have actually been a field goal. It was the Gator Bowl where Kroger throws that ball to Hunter Rogers for the touchdown. I want to say that was a field goal try. That was a fake field goal, but I can't recall off the top of my head.
I believe that was a fake field goal.
Yeah, I think that was.
Yeah. Now, that wasn't the last time they ran something successful like that.
There's definitely one in there somewhere.
I know there had to have been some in the 24 season. I just can't remember.
Text
what
line,
the most
help
recent
us
was.
out.
Yeah, let us know. When's the last time South Carolina ran a successful fake punt? Because I went through a lot, and I was having trouble figuring out what the last one was. Now, again, there's been a lot of bad ones since then.
You know what it could have been? It could have been DeCarrion's touchdown against Florida in 22.
It can't have been that long ago.
That's just the one. That's just one that comes to mind.
And I'm not talking about, like, you don't have to score a touchdown. I'm just like converting.
When was Pete's last season here? 22 or 23?
23.
All right, so there's a good chance that 23 season contains some, but that was also a bad year. You know, that was a bad season. Yeah. I don't remember off the top of my head of like anything like that really happening. Maybe there was something in there somewhere.
And the reason I bring this up is because, again, with the Beamer ball and all that kind of stuff, you almost expect it, right? Like, you know, that's kind of the MO that South Carolina and Shane Beamer are always going to have that kind of thing in their back pocket, ready to pull out. And in this instance, we're talking specifically about a fake punt, but I'm talking about all fakes when it comes to fake field goals, fake punts, all those kind of going for it on fourth down in general, whatever it may be. So I feel like it's getting harder to catch teams off guard because they're always expecting, like, okay, all right, South Carolina's got a 4th and 4 at midfield or something like that. Like, all right, there's a good chance they're probably going to try and run a fake here. I feel like it's harder to catch teams off guard because you're so well known for those kind of things now.
Very true. I'm looking up Kroger's. So to get for context here, there was a touchdown Kroger threw for in 21, then 2 more in 22, the ones I just listed off there with DK, and then the one to Rogers. No touchdowns in 23, no touchdowns in 24. So I'm willing to think, like, there was so Kroger was 1 for 2 passing for 32 yards in 23. So you're talking like just fake punts in general that were successful. There was probably 1 in 23, but obviously it's a lot easier to remember the touchdowns compared to a random play during the middle of a game that, whether I couldn't even tell you if it went for anything or not. Did it lead to a touchdown? Did it lead to nothing? I could not tell you what the last time they had something like that was.
I know there was one that got called back against LSU last year on a penalty. And Beamer was upset about it after the game. Let's see. Okay. He said, I didn't know how the punter, the personal protector, is making the call, and the snapper is supposed to know to not snap it when the referee stamped for the punt. That's right, because they snapped it, and they said they weren't allowed to snap it. You remember that? From the LSU game last year?
LSU? What time of the game was this?
I don't remember the sequence. I think it was in the third quarter. I don't remember. I know. We've probably blacked out a lot of that game. Or a lot of last season, really.
Yeah.
I do remember that now, but I don't know if they ran any successful fake punts a year ago.
Yeah.
Plenty of bad ones.
Yeah.
Several bad ones.
Yeah. Quite frankly, I just don't remember that. When you're doing the job and you're typing and doing all these things, you don't really.
Yeah.
Half the time you're not even looking up. Sometimes you just gotta watch the play back on the replay screen. So yeah, that's how it goes.
Nameless Texter says 2023. Against Tennessee, 32-yard fake punt to Leggett. I remember that.
Well, that would explain the 32 yards he passed for.
Yeah. So. Is that the last time they did it successfully? I hope not. That's been a long time ago.
But it just goes to show the last 2 years have been a bit of a struggle. It's okay, right? It shows that Joe DeCamillis probably would have been here if he didn't accept the job with the Raiders, right? So I mean. The fact that change happened, now you got Matthew Smiley in here. Maybe it's a blessing in disguise, so that way you can try to return to that level of success you had when Pete was here.
Now, in the NFL, it's obviously a lot harder to pull these things off, but do you recall Matthew Smiley being more aggressive with these type of things with the Bills?
Trying to remember. Again, it's been a few years since he was the coach there. Not off the top of my head. I don't really remember the Bills running, maybe like once or twice, but I really don't remember a ton of fakes. That said, it could have just been a different thing with Sean McDermott. Maybe he didn't want to.
Sure.
Maybe that just wasn't the plan. Maybe the NFL's a little different in that way. But obviously with Shane Beamer, that's a part of his bread and butter is those trick plays, special plays. So I'd imagine we're still going to see a lot of that here this season.
Well, with how tough the schedule is going to be, you're going to need all the help you can get. Speaking of the schedule, Brad Crawford of CBS Sports put out his projections for the win totals of every SEC team. What does he have to say about South Carolina? We'll dive into it and debate it coming up next. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri along with you here on your Monday on the Game. It's all right here for our friends over at Twin Peaks. You know that big soccer tournament still going on. We've entered into the knockout stage, which means these games really, really count now. America's going to be playing coming up on Wednesday, and only one place to take in all that amazing elimination soccer, and that's with our friends over at Twin Peaks. Get on down to Lodge if you're here in Columbia, located right down the street from us at 600 Gervais Street. Pull up a bar stool, look in any direction. You'll see a TV with whatever game you're interested in, and order yourself some delicious scratch-made food from the Twin Peaks Kitchen. And do not forget about those 29-degree draft beers to wash it all down with and enjoy your soccer summer with our friends over at Twin Peaks. Eats, drinks, and scenic views. right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri along with you here on your Monday on the Game, creeping ever closer to the start of the college football season. We're fully immersed in the season of lists, season predictions, and all those kind of things, Jack. And our guy Brad Crawford over at CBS Sports just the other day put out his full predictions for wins and losses for all SEC teams. We'll get to the other teams coming up in a minute, but we'll, of course, start focusing on South Carolina. Before we get into who they beat, who they lose to, he's got South Carolina projected at 7-5 overall and 4-5 in conference play without knowing the context of anything else. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, I think that's fine. Look, the expectations should be to get back to where you were 2 years ago, but we know that's easier said than done. So if you improve your win total from 4 to 7 wins with a chance to win 8 at a bowl game, that's a pretty good year right there for South Carolina, because that's kind of what they've been, right? Outside of a few great seasons here and there, it's typically been about that. So, yeah, if you get to 7 wins, and depending on who you beat along the way, you feel pretty good about that. But the way I look at it is, look, you're going to be 2-0, probably 3-0 through the first 3 weeks of the year. The rest of the year, you're going 4-5. So when you look at it that way, that's not necessarily great, especially when you get 2 freebie wins right off the jump. So that is something to consider there of, okay, well, you're not doing that great the rest of the way. You're going 5-5, but we know the SEC is a very tough conference.
So the way that he has this set up as his predictions, the wins, again, 7 of them, Kent State, Towson, Mississippi State, Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, and Clemson, which means the losses would be Alabama, Florida, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, and Arkansas. Now, this is what really kind of stood out to me is like, okay, I don't see a world where South Carolina loses to Arkansas and then still beats Georgia and Clemson to wrap up the regular season, but I'll read the kind of last sentence or so here of Brad's write-up for his prediction for South Carolina. He says, projected at 5-5 overall after a stunning loss at Arkansas, Beamer keeps his job by doing the unthinkable and upsetting the Bulldogs at Williams-Brice before beating his in-state rival away from Columbia. So in a way, he's almost kind of mimicking the 2022 season a little bit because, of course, Carolina goes on the road and loses in ugly fashion to Florida. We just mentioned the Dakereon Joyner special team score there. That was the only points they scored that day in that 30-6 loss. Carolina, at least at that point in time, had already won 6 games, so you knew they were going to go to a bowl game at the very least. And then, of course, they pull off 2 of the biggest upsets in program history by beating Tennessee and beating Clemson in back-to-back weeks, getting 8-4, and, of course, earning a berth in the Gator Bowl after that. So it's almost kind of predicting the same thing here, where you'd be sitting at 5-5, knowing you have to win at least one of your final 2 games against Georgia and Clemson just to get to bowl eligibility, and he has them winning both those games. I don't know if I see that pathway. You know what I mean?
I don't buy it. I don't. I don't think it's some guarantee they're beating Tennessee, Georgia, and Clemson. Now, the first 4 games, yeah. These should be the games that South Carolina wins, no problem. Kent State, Towson, Mississippi State, Kentucky, all at home early on in the year. Yeah, they should win those games. I understand all these road games here being pretty tricky. And like that is really where a lot of these losses could come from. Like Bama's a loss, Florida, Oklahoma, Arkansas. Those are all losses on Brad's thing here. A&M a loss at home. I understand that one. A&M's a good team. Beating Georgia, though, I don't see it, man. I mean, I know we're talking about something that's going to be, at the end of November, but I mean, Georgia. When's the last time 2019 is the last time South Carolina's beaten Georgia?
Yep.
I don't know. Maybe, but I mean, it would take like a 22 Tennessee type performance for the South Carolina to pull off that magnitude of an upset. Maybe, I don't know, but.
Yeah, and again, as we talk about, that back half of the schedule is so daunting, and I guess the way, if I kind of want to look inside the way, if you may have predicted this, you go through this gauntlet of Tennessee at Oklahoma and then A&M right out of your bye week. So 3 weeks in a row there, 3 tough opponents, and we'll get into previewing Tennessee more specifically coming up little bit later on the show, and maybe it's like, okay, you go to Arkansas on November 14th and you're just gassed. Like you're just beat down from playing those 3 games in a row that you just end up falling to what I don't know anybody thinks is going to be a great Arkansas team this year. And year number 1 under Ryan Silverfield. It's just like, and again, I know it happened in 2022 with the Florida to Tennessee from one week to the next, but like I have a tough time believing if you're going to lose to Arkansas that you follow that up by beating Georgia the next week and then Clemson to close out the regular season. I just think like, all right, I would flip the Arkansas and Georgia games probably.
Yeah. Then again, the way this looks to me plays very similar to how that 22 season went, where you mentioned it. They got their butts kicked by Florida, and then in the next week they pull off a stunner, score 63 points against Tennessee. Then the week after that, they go to Death Valley and beat Clemson on the road. So. I mean, the way this plays out is exactly like that to some degree because you're playing Arkansas on the road. But who knows how Arkansas is even going to be this year? I don't think South Carolina has many excuses to lose to Arkansas or Kentucky or Florida on the road. I think Summerall's a good coach, so it wouldn't be that shocking if they lost that game. But, like, Arkansas, I mean, I don't know. Unless Arkansas just turns out to be the Cinderella darling team of the SEC this year, I think that's a game you probably should win. Like but upsets happen though. We know that it's on the road. It's late in the year. We'll see what time that game ultimately ends up being. But that's one that I would group with those first 4 games there that Brad has his wins. Like I'd put Arkansas in that mix as well as like that's another game you have got to win. If you want to make a bowl game, you can't be losing to Arkansas. You can find ways to pull off some upsets, but you don't want to bank on that happening. You want to be able to bank on yourself getting those other wins along the way, and then you get an upset or 2 along the way to help even you out to where you get to 7, 8 wins.
Yeah, and again, it also depends on how these games look as well. Because, again, I think it's very believable that you can beat Kent State, Towson, Mississippi State, Kentucky, even Tennessee and Clemson as well. Again, I would switch the Georgia and Arkansas thing here. But, like, when you're talking about these losses, which, again, he has at Alabama, at Florida, at A&M, at Oklahoma, A&M, and then at Arkansas, it's one thing if you're losing these games to what we, again, assume between Alabama, Oklahoma, and A&M are probably going to be teams once again in the mix for the college football playoff. If you're losing these games by, 3 points and in tight 4-quarter battles, that's one thing. If you're getting obliterated by 3 touchdowns, that's another. So the way you lose these games also plays into how a 7-5 season is going to be perceived.
Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, I could see losses to Bama and Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma could definitely. I think South Carolina could win a lot of these games, but I don't know if I see it with some of these other games like Georgia. That is a bold upset. I just have not seen many people predict so far.
Yeah, and look, our attitudes and opinions will change as the season goes along because, as we talk about, we don't know enough about these teams right now. We have our predictions, we have our ideas, but I can't tell you definitively what teams are going to be, especially in November, especially for a team like Arkansas that has a brand new head coach and new players in the portal and stuff like that. We're operating on what we think at this point in time, and what we think is, again, I think 7-5 would be a significant step in the right direction. And again, I think those teams that he has listed that Carolina can beat for the most part are very believable. We'll see if that ends up being true or not.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens.
He did this for all teams in the SEC. We'll hit a couple of things that really stood out to me in terms of what he's predicting for the conference this upcoming year coming up next. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Feltry along with you here on your Monday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri with you on your Monday here on the game. We're going through Brad Crawford of CBS Sports projections for wins and losses in the SEC this year. Again, he has South Carolina at 7-5 overall, 4-5 in conference play. Also, for what it's worth, also has them projected in the Texas Bowl, which again, when Carolina's not been in a bowl game this past year, any bowl would sound good, whether it's Texas, Gasparilla Bowl, Liberty Bowl, whatever it may be. If you can get over the 6-win mark or get to the 6-win mark and play somewhere in December, that's certainly a step in the right direction. He, of course, again, did the totals for all teams in the SEC. Only 3 teams reaching double-digit wins in the regular season. This doesn't count what they're going to do in the postseason and all that kind of stuff. But he has Texas at 12-1. He's projecting them to win the SEC. He has Georgia 11-2, projecting them to lose to Texas in the SEC championship game. And then LSU at 10-2. And being a 9 seed in the college football playoff. Also, Ole Miss at 9-3, also making the college football playoff. So 4 teams in the SEC in Texas, Georgia, LSU, and Ole Miss, all being in the college football playoff. That sound right to you?
Yeah, it should sound right. Georgia, Texas, no surprise there. I mean, they definitely should be no-brainers, I think, at this point. LSU, yeah, I think the way their schedule works, I could see them losing at Ole Miss and at Tennessee. I think those are games that are ironically very, tied to Lane Kiffin and his ties to those schools, especially Ole Miss early on in the year. I think Ole Miss, that's a game they're going to be playing up for and doing everything they can to win. College game day is going to be there probably, so that's going to be a big game there. But the rest of the schedule, yeah, I could see it. I mean, you get at Kentucky. That should be a win there. A&M's at home. Mississippi State's at home. You go to Auburn. That's always tricky. It is funny, though. Brad does have – so he has a win at Tennessee, but he also has a loss at Tennessee. So which really is it there? I'm guessing it's going to be a loss at Tennessee, but you get Bama at home, A&M at home, Clemson, Arkansas at home, Mississippi State. I see a world in which LSU gets to 10 wins.
Yeah, I think he might have mistyped on that because I'm pretty sure he has them losing on the road at Tennessee. The 2 Lane Kiffin specials, of course, the other 2 teams in the SEC that he's coached at in Ole Miss and Tennessee. The Ole Miss game specifically, again, how early that is in the season, as you mentioned, game day will probably be under there and all that kind of stuff. If there's one game that I think everybody in the country is picking Ole Miss to win, it's probably that one, just for the sheer amount of hatred that's going to be coursing through Vaught Hemingway Stadium for that. Lane Kiffin's going to need a military escort to get in and out of Oxford more likely than not. I think that's an easy one to look at and say, yeah, I just don't know if LSU goes in there and wins that one. But given what that team is roster-wise, they should still be pretty good. Do they make the playoff? We'll see. But they should, if they're not in the conversation, that's a failure on Lane Kiffin's part in year 1.
Absolutely. Now, Ole Miss, I thoroughly disagree with them making the playoff based on what Brad has here. So, losses at Texas, Georgia, and at Oklahoma. Okay, that's fine. You lose those games, understandable. What are the wins? Louisville, Charlotte, LSU, at Florida, at Vanderbilt, Missouri, Auburn, Wofford, Mississippi State. I'm sorry, but right now, where things stand and what we know going into the year, there's no way that is going to be enough to make the playoff. I just don't see it, especially as a 9-3 team. I don't see that. Where are the great wins along the way? Okay, LSU's a good win, probably. At Florida, maybe, but at Vanderbilt, we'll see what Vanderbilt is. The problem is there's too much unknown with a lot of these teams. LSU, probably going to be good. Florida, Vandy, Missouri, Auburn, Mississippi State, I couldn't tell you. They're either going to be they very well could be borderline 6-6 teams. Maybe they surprise everyone and have these great seasons, and that improves Ole Miss's projection. And maybe that's what Brad is thinking here, is that when Ole Miss beats these teams, they may not be great, but by the end of the year, they're going to finish ranked, all these different things. That would make the case a lot easier. But as it currently stands right now, especially with the losses against Texas, Georgia, and Oklahoma, your toughest opponents on the schedule, I can't see a 9-3 being enough.
Yeah, and especially considering the fact that those 3 losses would occur over a 4-week stretch, because they have at Texas on October 24th, Auburn on Halloween, and then Georgia and Oklahoma November 7th and November 14th. So, and the playoff rankings, I believe, would come out either the Tuesday after, I think it's Tuesday after Halloween. So you'd already have 1 loss at that point in time, which, all right, realistically, you could still be projected somewhere in the back half of the top 10 or something, even with that loss. But having 2 losses in the rankings era in that last month of the season, that's a really tough ask, especially considering the fact you wouldn't be in the SEC championship game for your 13th data point or anything like that. I just, with the timing of where those losses would be, I don't know if that will be enough to get you in.
No, I don't see it. No way. 9-3, and also I feel like the precedent's kind of been set. Unless I'm forgetting something here, there's even been cases now where 10-2 teams like Vanderbilt didn't make the playoff last year when they went 10-2. So it's no guarantee that if 9-3 teams were getting in, we would have seen South Carolina get in 2 years ago. But that was not the case, and I don't know if it's all of a sudden going to change now, especially. I don't know. I mean, Vanderbilt would have to be ranked. I mean, you have to have probably, and based on these projections he has too, Missouri's a 6-6 team in his projection. Let me look up Auburn real quick. Auburn would be a 7-5 team.
Mm-hmm.
Vanderbilt would be
6-6.
Yeah, that's just. I'm sorry, that's not getting it done. A win over LSU, a 10-2 LSU team is great, but it's at home, number 1, and it's so early in the year. But then also your other wins, we're not expecting Mississippi State to be any good either. I mean, what's Florida supposed to be?
Florida, he has at 6-6 as well.
Yeah, no, that's ludicrous. There's no way Ole Miss is making the playoff with those wins right there.
Speaking of Vanderbilt, as I mentioned, 6-6 kind of has them coming back down to earth a little bit. Again, 6-6 2 years ago, including that upset of Alabama. Obviously, one of the best years in program history this past year, winning 10 games and being in the college football playoff mix. We knew with losing Diego Pavia, with losing Eli Stowers, losing a lot of talent on that team, there's a chance they could go back to being same old Vanderbilt. Now, I will say 6-6 by Vanderbilt standards is still pretty good. It's not like they're going back to 2-10. But I don't know enough about Jared Curtis. Right, 5-star kid coming in, he could be the next superstar of college football. But until proven otherwise, I would have to be pretty reserved. Just all right, I think 6-6 is a fair thing to assume for a team like that until proven otherwise.
They lost some pretty big pieces, like you said, Tyler. I mean, it's tough to replace. Now they got Curtis, like you said. Great prospect coming out of high school. He's probably starting right away. But how does that look? How does that transition look when you're going up against – it's one thing to put up the numbers you do against high school guys, but when you're facing SEC defenses every week in this conference, that's going to be tricky. So maybe he blows everyone away, has a great year, and I think that would be what pushes Vanderbilt over the edge to have another great year. But, I mean, the wins you're looking at, Austin Peay, Delaware, NC State, Arkansas, at Mississippi State, Tennessee, I could see all those happening for sure. It's the road. It's the other games here. The losses at Auburn, at Georgia, Ole Miss, at Kentucky, Alabama, at Florida. I can see all those games happening. So 6-6 feels right, but I feel like if Curtis is going to have a great year and they get some other pieces around him to really do their thing, yeah, Vanderbilt could be a much better team.
We'll start finding out in a little over 2 months. Again, those are Brad Crawford's projected wins and loss totals for teams in the SEC. We'll come back, wrap up hour number 1. The Travelers Championship got pushed to a playoff this morning. What are the final results? We'll tell you about it on the other side, as well as what's the latest with the World Cup, too. It is The Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri along with you on your Monday here on The Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri wrapping up hour number 1 in your Monday here on The Game. Jack, I love overtime or extra innings or whatever it may be. When there is a sudden death factor to sports, it always makes it more exciting. And we got a pretty rare thing that happened in golf over the weekend as Viktor Hovland and Scottie Scheffler ended up all tied yesterday at the end of 4 rounds at the Travelers. Well, unfortunately, they had about an hour-and-a-half weather delay that did not allow them adequate light to play a extra sudden death hole playoff. So I got pushed to this morning. Well, if you were planning your morning around watching that, well, unfortunately, it's already over. Viktor Hovland picks up the win on the 18-hole sudden death by making it in 3 strokes over Scottie Scheffler.
Yeah, but I think this hole very well could have gone on more for another. It would have extended the playoff if Scottie hadn't missed it. Have you seen the putt that he missed?
I have. Which,
man.
Kind of the story of the weekend for him. A lot of his short game, ringing around the hole, missing short stuff, and kind of almost fitting in for it to just kind of go around the rim there on what would have been a playoff extender.
Pretty short putt there too. I mean,
like 5 feet.
Yeah,
maybe?
Like kind of remind me of like a few years ago where Rory missed that putt from like 4 feet out against Bryson at the U.S. Open. I mean, that's tough. And you look at the year Scottie's had. Like he won the American Express to open the season, but since then he's had 9 top 5 finishes. That's insane to think about. Like he's continuously come very close. And the discussion this entire time, going back to the beginning of the season, was, well, he plays pretty rough on Thursday and Friday, but he makes the cut. He does barely enough, and then he turns it up to a completely different level. Plays like himself, like one of the best players, if not the best player in the world, and does enough, but he comes up just short. That's what we've continued to see here. But this weekend felt different, though, because he had the lead. Victor's right there, gaining ground on him. He eventually does. And then they have to go this playoff hole, and then he misses that short putt right there. So it's another tough loss for Scottie. He'll be fine.
Sure.
The way he continues to he's always giving himself a chance. And eventually, one of these days, he's going to break through because that's what we've just grown accustomed to here. But that's a really tough loss right there, given that putt right there. I mean, who knows what happens if he makes that?
Yeah.
He goes on to have another great hole. Who knows? It could have very well turned out differently.
Yeah, this is now 13 straight events he's gone since winning. You mentioned that when he got at the very beginning of the year. This is his longest streak without a win since 2023. Again, he's putting himself in the mix. He'll get a win here very soon. But it is interesting to see how close he's come with not being able to get it done in quite a while. So. That's what's happening at the Travelers Championship this morning with a very quick 1-hole playoff. Obviously, the World Cup continues to roll on as the knockout stage officially begins. Had one game yesterday, Canada picking up the win over South Africa to eliminate South Africa from the tournament. And then, of course, we have America coming up on Wednesdays to take on Bosnia at 8 o'clock for the knockout game there in the round of 32. Are you? I know you're not a big soccer guy, Jack, but are you allowing yourself to believe that maybe they could go on some kind of run that could at least be fun to enjoy for a couple of weeks?
Well, let's see. So you get Bosnia. If you win that, you play the winner of Belgium or Senegal. I don't know how that's going to look. On the other part of the bracket, you got Portugal, Croatia, Spain, Austria. So that could be very tough if you get to the round of 16. I don't know. I mean, I think the U.S. has a good chance to go on a run. I say that without really knowing anything about these teams or anything. But, the U.S. has played very well here. There is definitely some worry on my end after that loss to Turkey A, last week, that maybe you lose some of the momentum. But at the same time, it's like that game meant nothing really for the U.S. other than just keep everyone healthy and don't have anyone get suspended to where they miss the next game with yellow cards and whatnot. It's been, you by the time you play again, you'll have a week break. So hopefully you've had enough time to flush that loss, move on, and get everything back on track. But you got to come out here with a good start in this game on Wednesday. And I expect the U.S. to come out here playing well because it's the 4th of July is coming up this weekend, America 250, all that stuff. And the opportunity to go on a deep run here, I think all that is going to play very well into the U.S.'s favor here.
Yeah, it's one of those things. And again, for America, rarely are we kind of in the underdog spot because we're typically among the best, if not the best, in most of the sports, especially the ones that they play on an international stage. So I'm just kind of going into this with blind ambition of you know what? I'm going to believe America can win this entire thing until proven otherwise. And that could come to an end on Wednesday for all we know. I hope not. I hope this can be something we can follow for a couple weeks. It's been so fun so far. You know what I mean? We're not soccer experts by any means, but watching America win the first couple games they had in their group stage prior to the loss to Turkey, which again was inconsequential, all things considered, has been really fun to keep up with. I love the buzz and the anticipation and hype that I see on social media and stuff like that for people getting into this. And hopefully they can keep this going for a couple more weeks, especially like you said, with the 4th of July coming up this weekend. You got to make this happen, or you got to do something special for America 250.
Yeah, so the U.S. seems to be a pretty decent favorite. 185 money line is the U.S. right now. The spread is 1.5 goals. So it's, I don't know. I'm going to imagine they should win this game. I don't know. It's on their home soil, so that should help. But we'll see, man. We'll see. That's going to be very interesting out in Santa Clara, where it's Levi Stadium with the name covered out there.
I guess it's just Santa Clara Stadium.
Maybe
for the purposes of this.
Just stadium.
Yeah, just stadium.
Stadium.
Yeah. Even though you know what logo is under that big tarp at the end of the day. Hour number 1 in the books coming up in hour number 2. We'll preview Tennessee and talk some baseball as well as the Extra Point rolls along on your Monday on the Game. Welcome back in hour number 2. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Feltry on your Monday here on The Game, as we've been doing for the past week, and we'll continue. I guess it'll kind of creep into the beginning of next week because we're only here through Thursday this week. But doing our opponent previews as we take a look at South Carolina's 12 regular season opponents coming up for the 2026 season. We got through the first half of the season last week. Again, I combined Kent State and Towson last Monday because I didn't really feel the need to dive into those teams individually. We now have a bye week, and coming off the bye week is a pretty interesting matchup as Tennessee comes to town. Why is that significant? Well, the last time Tennessee was in town was, of course, that aforementioned upset in 2022, one of the greatest moments in South Carolina football program history, one of the most shocking upsets we've seen in college football in a while, and that'll be the first time that Tennessee's come back here since that fateful night.
Yeah, so that'll be a real interesting game. Not a night game this time around. It'll be either a 3:30 or 4:30 or 4 o'clock game. So we'll see. So it's an afternoon game, but it's late in October. Daylight savings should already be going on by that point. So we're talking like it should get pretty dark there by the second half to where it does feel like a night game to some degree. But an interesting game. It is the first game off the bye week, like you mentioned, Tyler. For South Carolina, who knows how they're going to be by that point in the season. Ideally, you'd like to have maybe like no losses or 1 loss, or I think maybe like 2 losses is probably the max you want to have going into that bye week. But you get a week off after that Florida game. Hopefully you got some momentum. Tennessee at home. And this is an interesting team because, you know, Josh Heupel's done a very good job out there with the Vols for the most part. But who's their quarterback going to be? That's my first question, is who is their quarterback going to be, and is it changing by that point in the year?
Also worth noting here that South Carolina does get Tennessee off the 3rd Saturday in October, so the rivalry game against Alabama is the week before. Then they come into Willie B the week after that. So that's something that could play into their factor. That obviously is a highly emotional, physical game. They'll play against Alabama. I believe they've gotten them the last 2 times they've played this game in Knoxville. And we'll see if that continues or not. But that does benefit South Carolina a little bit. And coming off the bye week, that could play into their hand when this game gets played.
So you look at their quarterback situation. It's a 3-way battle. You got redshirt freshman George McIntyre, who's been with the program for a little bit now. True freshman Faison Brandon. Feels like that name should be the other way around. Brandon Faison, not Faison Brandon. That's interesting, but neither here nor there. And then you have Colorado transfer Ryan Staub, who was at Colorado for 3 years. Didn't really play a ton. He saw his most action last year, but threw 3 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. So they don't have a proven guy at the quarterback position right now. Now, obviously, one of those guys will have to emerge when preseason camp gets rolling in the early part of the season. I'm going to look at Tennessee's schedule to see who they have early in the year to kind of get. So Furman, that should be a game where you get a bunch of different guys in. At Georgia Tech, at night, that's a really intriguing game. At Bobby Dodd. Kennesaw State's another game where you should be able to kind of start figuring out your quarterback situation heading into that Texas game week 4. But the schedule's really tough, man. And you get Auburn at Arkansas, Bama at home, at South Carolina. Then you're finally going into your bye week during Halloween. So it's a tricky slate. Tennessee may have a few losses already by that point. And maybe that's a good thing for South Carolina because maybe that means things aren't going super well at that quarterback position. Yeah,
and George McIntyre is a name that people may be familiar with because he was in the mix last year, if you remember, in the spring a year ago was when all the Nico Imaliava stuff happened. And then it was kind of like, oh, okay, well, I guess George McIntyre's the guy now. They, of course, would go on to, in a way, kind of trade with UCLA and bring in Joey Aguilar, who ended up winning out the quarterback competition there. But George McIntyre's been there for a few years. He's just honestly not really done a whole lot. He's, I think, 7 of 9 for 69 total yards, so that doesn't give you a large sample size there. Ryan Staub, as you mentioned, the most experience of that group from his time at Colorado. Well, when he has got to play, it hasn't really been great. So he doesn't come in. I don't think he instills a lot of confidence in the fan base coming in. Now, you can chalk that up to just not having maybe as much help around him as he needed at Colorado, bad offensive line play or whatever it may be. And then you have Faison Brandon, who comes in as the 5-star freshman. And much like we talked about with Vanderbilt and Jared Curtis, like, all right, maybe it'll be great, maybe it'll be awful. You just kind of have to wait and see. But considering what Tennessee has had the past couple of years with more of a sure thing type situation at times under Josh Heupel, go back to Hendon Hooker and all that kind of stuff. This is definitely not the most comfortable feeling for that fan base going this year with that kind of quarterback situation. Though, hey, one of these guys could emerge; they could be great, but until proven otherwise, you just don't know.
Yeah, and you lose a 1,000-yard receiver in Chris Braswell. You do get back Deshaun Bishop, who rushed for over 1,000 yards last year, and you get back 2 guys that were 800-plus yard receivers. So there are pieces on this offense, but again, I think a lot of it does boil down to who emerges in that quarterback room and how do they look. That's the big thing. Because, I mean, a few years ago when Tennessee is on the verge of making the college football playoff, I mean, Hendon Hooker was having a tremendous season before getting that injury against South Carolina at the end of the year. Like, he was a star for Tennessee that season. So that's kind of the way I look at it is you got to have somebody in that room that can kind of manage things offensively. Doesn't need to be the greatest quarterback in the world, but just somebody to get the ball out to these playmakers and let them do their thing is going to be a big thing here for Tennessee.
So on the defensive side of the football, this is where things get pretty interesting because Tennessee lost a lot of production when it came to their pass rush in terms of the total sacks they had a year ago. Over half of those sacks are now gone off the roster, including one of those guys being Caleb Herron, who's of course now here at South Carolina. So we'll see what effect that has. Now, one thing that Tennessee did do in the offseason was go out there and acquire what many thought was one of the best edge prospects in the transfer portal, and Chaz Coleman from Penn State. Jim Knowles, defensive coordinator, coming over from Penn State, so a natural move for Chaz Coleman to follow him. Was Coleman in the mix here at South Carolina? I remember that name coming up early in the offseason.
Yeah, that was a name that South Carolina was going after, and at the end of the day, I think some of us thought that maybe he would commit here with his connection with Deion Barnes, but at the end of the day, Tennessee won out. And, yeah, I think that move did not work really at all for Tennessee or Coleman.
Yeah, so this news coming out the other day that he is not going to be playing for the team this year. A lot of stuff's been happening. He missed a lot of spring practice for various reasons. Now there's some physical stuff going on in terms of an injury that carried over from Penn State last year. Also some reports about him being homesick and things like that. Also apparently he was having some trouble with being on time for things, engagement level, a whole mess of a situation that I'm sure we'll get a lot more intimate details on as time goes along. But for somebody that they seemingly were set to pay about $2 million for and potentially be the leader of their pass rush or one of the leaders of their pass rush, they now don't have that 2 months ahead of the season.
Yeah, so that's a tough loss there. So, yeah, defensively, I don't know. I mean, Jim Knowles will probably do a good job there, but that's a big tough piece to lose there. But look, if things are not working out and on that end, and Coleman's not holding up his end of the bargain, then yeah, you got to part ways, regardless of how good the player is that you brought in. It just does not seem like it was working out for them there with some issues going on there in Knoxville.
Yeah, and this is a much different situation than what happened with Nico and even Boo Carter
far different
as well.
Far different.
But it's kind of a recurring thing with Tennessee of having these guys that end up not continuing on with the team, kicked off the team, whatever you want to phrase it, that are pretty high-profile players. Again, Boo Carter, defensive back, Nico Umaleava, the quarterback last year. And if you're a Tennessee fan, you got to be getting kind of sick of these things popping up like this.
But it makes you wonder, though, why does it keep happening? Right? What is going wrong? What is in the water there in Knoxville that is leading to all these different things happening? Now, some of it I feel like does have to do with the day and age of NIL and entitlement, and these guys, their egos are massive. So, yeah, like a guy like Nico and his dad and that whole situation, I blame that more on the player and the family more than I do on Tennessee. The whole Coleman situation, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know all the details of that, but obviously things were I mean, it's pretty crazy that we're in June and this kid committed only a couple months ago, and the season hasn't even started yet. And for them to move on from a guy that they probably paid a lot in NIL, the type of player he can be, that's something really had to have gone awry during these last few weeks.
Yeah, from what I've read, they're going to keep him on scholarship to allow him to still pursue his education. So it doesn't seem like it was anything too egregious. Again, this mental stuff, some things carrying over from injuries at Penn State. So they're still committed to helping him out. But yeah, definitely a weird situation in terms of him not playing for the team this upcoming year. And I don't believe they're on the hook for that $2 million. I believe they were able to work something out there where they're not going to end up having to pay him all that money, considering the fact that he's not going to play. Kind of zeroing in on Josh Heupel a little bit here. He has been at Tennessee the same amount of time that Shane Beamer has been here at South Carolina. And funny enough, there is kind of an even year element to Josh Heupel as well. 7-6 in 2021, 11-2. Again, Carolina crushed their hopes of making the playoff that year. 9-4 in 2023. 10-3 in 2024, made the playoff for the first time, then down to 8-5 in 2025. So much like South Carolina, something about even years seems to benefit Josh Heupel.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. A lot of things have got to play out well for them. I think the pieces are there offensively. The quarterback, they have time to figure it out here, but you would ideally what you would like, that Georgia Tech game, you're probably going in as an underdog. You would like that quarterback, whoever starts that game, McIntyre, Staub, whoever, to go out there, have a great game, and then you kind of have your quarterback situation figured out to where the following week when you're playing like a Chattanooga or whoever, you don't have to you know who your guy is going to be when you head into that Texas game before you even head into that third game of the season there. So that would be best case scenario for Tennessee. It gives them an early good win on the resume at the start of the year, gives them confidence, and then they kind of figure it out after that. So
again, we're previewing South Carolina's opponents. We'll continue on with that coming up tomorrow, but we're 7 teams in so far ahead of the 2026 season. Of course, we're really locked in on football, but we continue to learn more things about Kevin Schnall and his baseball team as the 2027 season will be his first here at South Carolina. We got another commitment this morning, and we'll take a look at where the roster stands at this point in time in the offseason coming up next. It is The Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri on your Monday here in the game. All right, welcome back in. Extra Point, Tyler Head, Jack Veltri, along with you here on your Monday on the Game. Of course, the Kevin Schnall era will begin for South Carolina officially in terms of games being played coming up in February. But my goodness, there's been a lot of news these past couple of weeks in terms of what he's adding in the transfer portal. Seems like you're getting somebody just about every single day. And, Jack, we got another addition earlier on this morning to add to the pitching staff.
Yeah, so that was what I woke up this morning. I go get my computer in my other room, and I start typing for the next 15 minutes. That's why I was a minute or two late for work this morning, is Miguel Hugas, a right-handed pitcher from Mercer, committed to the program. So his story's kind of interesting. He's from Venezuela originally, born there, but he grew up in Pittsburgh. And then he went to Chipola College, which I think ironically is where Dylan Eskew went before coming to South Carolina. So there is some familiarity there. And then, this year at Mercer, went 9-2. That's great. 6.17 ERA in 15 starts. Struck out 52 batters, but he walked 24 and had an additional 21 hit by pitches. So there's command issues there for sure. There's also some potential that he could be really good. He had some great outings. He held Troy, who went to the College World Series this year, to 1 run during his first start of the year. He pitched 8 innings of 2-run ball against Tennessee Tech. He had 7 shutout innings against Wofford. Some good outings in there, but there's also a few really bad outings where he gave up 11 runs against Western Carolina, and then he had a few more outings where he allowed 5 or more runs, I think 4 this year. So there's potential. There's some stuff, but there's also some struggles that you got to figure out there. But, yeah, you're right. Literally, I think, let's see, 1, 2, 3, the last 6 days, South Carolina's had a portal pickup every day, dating back to J.D. Stein on June 24th. So things have continued to be off and rolling in the portal. You're up to 18 commitments now. I don't know the math off the top of my head, but I think at this point you're up to about 27 or 28 players on the roster now, and you probably have about 6 to 7 more spots to fill to get to 34, on the active roster. So the roster's almost complete at this point. I still think you need to add another outfielder and maybe another infielder, especially with the news of Will Craddock leaving for Mississippi State. But, yeah, the roster's coming together, and, Kevin Schnall's done a pretty good job here.
Real quick, to that point about Will Craddock is, again, we, like everybody that entered in the transfer portal, once the season came to an end, we understood because, hey, you didn't have a head coach, and you want to go out there and seek what your options are. We knew as well that after Schnall had been hired, Will Craddock, I guess it was the Friday before I left, was going to be on campus, or I guess the Friday after I came back, was going to be on campus meeting with Schnall and the new staff and all that kind of stuff. And there was a lot of optimism that he might end up deciding to return. But as you mentioned, just opts to go to Mississippi State instead. Does that surprise you at all?
It was a little bit of a surprise, but you couldn't rule it out because he visited South Carolina first about a week and a half ago. And then this last week here, he went to Mississippi State and Georgia. So and I don't know the order of, did he go to Georgia first? Did he go to Mississippi State first? I don't know. But, look, when you go, it just feels natural, right? When you go see these different places and then you go, the school that gets the last impression has a chance to really leave a lasting mark. And I can imagine that's kind of what happened here with Mississippi State, to where they have a good team already. He can be the next piece that helps them get to Omaha. That's the way, you can also look at it like for South Carolina here, like you can be the guy at South Carolina, or you can just be another player at Mississippi State. But at the same time, we know what South Carolina's been the last few years. It's been bad. Just because they hired Kevin Schnall does not automatically guarantee they're going to turn around. We think they could, right? We've talked about it. They should be a lot better next year, but that doesn't guarantee anything. And so maybe it's just a good pitch that they had out there in Starkville, a good situation. Maybe the NIL is pretty good too. But, with a guy like Will, I don't really think the NIL is the end-all, be-all. I mean, I think it's just a good situation, good opportunity to develop. And Mississippi State's a really good program. Brian O'Connor did a great job there year one, and I fully expect them to get to Omaha within the next few years here. So I'm not totally surprised. I think the only thing that does surprise me is that he is an in-state guy here at South Carolina and was willing to make the jump to Starkville. That should say a lot.
Yeah, while NIL may not be priority number one for Will Craddock, I still imagine he's probably pulling something pretty decent down there in Mississippi State, considering what his upside potential is. And we saw those flashes early in the season here at South Carolina. That's the reason why when we talked about guys potentially being retained, a lot of people pointed him like, hey, here's a guy, one of very few on the roster from this past year that you see a pathway of like, all right, if he comes in with it, if he comes back with the new coaching staff, they can maybe get that most out of him. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to see that. I guess your hope is that he's just not somebody that kills you on the other side. Again, we don't know what the schedule is going to look like. We don't know how many times you would see Mississippi State in potential, SEC tournament, or if you make the postseason next year in a situation like that. But you just hope Will Craddock doesn't, end up seeking out revenge against Carolina and having his best games against them. You know what I mean?
Now, let's also put it this way. I think this is important to bring up. How big of a loss actually is Will Craddock? It's a loss, but I think I've seen a lot of people say this, fans on social media, whatever, is that you lose any player from last year's team, oh well, right? I mean, I don't think you're losing sleep over any guy from the worst team in program history leaving for another school. Like the 24-plus guys that hit the portal, I think you're okay with most of them leaving and going elsewhere. Craddock's definitely one of the guys that you would have liked to have back, but we also need to put context in here. Yes, while he hit 260 and led the team with double-digit home runs with 10 on the year, he also was awful in SEC play. Like, I'm talking like every time he came up to the plate, it kind of felt like, okay, if you're a pitcher, throw this guy an outside breaking ball, he's likely to swing at it and not hit it. We saw that so often during SEC play to where he hit a $172 and he hit, I think, maybe 2 homers and had driven like 6 or 7 runs. I mean, the guy did not do anything in SEC play. So, yeah, that's the thing, is that if he goes to Mississippi State and he figures out how to hit SEC pitching, he's going to be a really good player. Because guess what? Again, even despite his bad numbers in conference play, he still had a decent season to where he was the team leader in home runs, and he still hit 260. He figures out in SEC play, he'll be a 300 hitter with like 20 home runs. I think that is probably a good assumption to say there. But I don't think you're losing sleep over him, because guess what? You can replace a guy like that right now, given the way he struggled against better competition.
So in terms of the guys that are returning, and again, if you because the portal's the portal's closed now, right?
Tomorrow will close.
Tomorrow closes. Okay, so I guess technically still time if you want to jump in, but at this point in time, you would assume if you're still here, you're probably going to be on the team next year. So is it Tyler Bach, Patrick Evans, and Brandon Cromer? Is that the only two? Only 3 returning?
Let me, hold on, I got to pull it up. One second here. So it would be, you would have Bach, Evans, Cromer, and then you'd have Marlott, Parks, and then you would also have, as of right now, we'll see what happens with the draft. I think that's the main thing here, because he hasn't entered his name into the portal, is Amp Phillips.
Okay.
So at this point, it's kind of like with Amp especially, it's like, all right, if he – now things have – now, he'll still only have 1 year of eligibility remaining because he's pitched for 4 years already. This will be his 5th and final season of college baseball if he came back. So he's a bit more of a draft risk in that way, because if he gets picked, depending on where he goes and, with the way things could change at the pro level next year and beyond, do you just go? Right? Do you just decide to turn pro, not take any gambles? You had a good season at South Carolina. Then again, I think his case is a little different because he is from this state. He grew up a massive Gamecock fan. He loves being here by all accounts. So that can make the decision a little bit tougher. He'd be a part of it. He'd be a big part of what I think could be a very good pitching staff. Working with Matt Williams, I think he could really even further develop his game and be a higher pick next year if he were to come back. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, it just comes down to where is he getting picked, and ultimately, if he's getting picked, does he decide to sign?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely some decisions to be made there coming up with the draft coming up here in a couple weeks, but it's kind of ran through there regardless of those decisions. It's going to be a very different looking South Carolina baseball team for Kevin Schnall's first year when the season gets started coming up in February. We'll stick with baseball coming up next because Jack has some thoughts on the selection process for the Major League Baseball All-Star Game, and he's not alone in this. We'll discuss that coming up on the other side as we continue on with the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri on your Monday here on The Game. All right, welcome back in. Extra Point, Tyler Head, Jack Veltri, along with you here on your Monday on the Game. We were just talking Gamecock baseball there a moment ago, and our friends over at Crescent Construction want you to win. So they realize we still have $325 to give away from our Grand Slam contest from the Gamecock baseball season that, well, they didn't hit enough Grand Slams, couldn't give them that money away. Well, we're going to give it away. So starting today, to celebrate the hiring of baseball coach Kevin Schnall, the Crescent Construction Grand Slam baseball coach hire is contest is underway. Just go to 1075thegame.com and click on the Crescent Construction Grand Slam giveaway and register to win for your chance to get that $325 from our friends over at Crescent Construction in celebration of Kevin Schnall being hired as South Carolina's new head baseball coach. Sticking with baseball, we'll slide over to Major League Baseball as we are only a couple of weeks away from the MLB All-Star Game, and we're starting to slowly figure out what these rosters are going to look like. Phase 1 is complete, and we learned the headliners in terms of the top overall vote getters just the other day. Shohei Ohtani representing the National League from the Dodgers, and then Ernie Clement from the Blue Jays representing the American League. Ohtani, no surprise there. Jack, this is where the controversy starts to come in a little bit because Ernie Clement, while having a really good season, maybe surprising some people as the top overall vote getter for the AL.
He's hitting 299 with 7 homers and 28 RBIs. His OPS is 759. I get it. He had a great postseason last year. He had the most hits, I think, in postseason history in a single postseason run. He's a good young player, but we're talking about this guy being. It's one thing if he was hitting like 350 with 10 homers and all this stuff, and he was putting up like magnificent numbers. Like, yeah, sure. Should he be starting at second base for the All-Star game? Absolutely. But a world in which this guy got nearly as many votes as Shohei Ohtani, ended up getting more votes than Mike Trout and Aaron Judge. I mean, when I think of most popular baseball players, because let's call it what it is, the MLB All-Star Game fan voting is a popularity contest at the end of the day. The fact that Ernie Clement is getting more votes than those marquee guys is wild to think about. But maybe he's more popular in Canada than we think. And speaking of Canada here, Canada has a lot to do with this voting here. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. should not be the starter for the American League in the All-Star game. He's not hitting that well this year. Pulling up his numbers right now. He's hitting 268 with 4 homers and 34 RBIs. The guy that is behind him right now is Ben Rice, who's hitting 272 with 22 homers and 53 RBIs. Now, if I tell you those numbers there, who should be starting in the All-Star game?
Yeah.
Ben Rice.
Right.
Ben Rice. He should be starting the All-Star game. Then you also have Alejandro Kirk, who has been the Blue Jays catcher. He found a way to be a finalist for the catcher spot over, notably, Dylan Dingler, who has been tearing it up with the Tigers this year. We know with catchers, offensive production is not always there. Shea Langeliers has had a great year with the A's. He's going to end up being the starter. But the fact that a guy that is hitting 183 with 2 homers, 7 RBIs, and 11 hits on the year is a finalist to be catching as the starter in the All-Star game for the American League is beyond ridiculous. So there's a big problem with fan voting, but there's also a big problem with, you can't compete with Canada. We're talking about an entire country getting to vote their guys in, which I don't think is very fair.
Yeah, and this kind of always seems to be the case where there's a lot of heavy amount of votes for Toronto, and again, there's the factor of them representing the entire country that probably helps out a lot there. And I've seen this debate. I was reading into it a little bit last night because, again, we've had fan voting for a very, very long time in Major League Baseball. Obviously now a lot easier when it comes to doing it online as opposed to mailing in your ballots or whatever it may be, from back in the day. But it's like, okay, how do you take it away completely? Do you take the power out of the fans? Do you pre-select a select group of guys and then allow, because right now it's complete free fall. You can vote for literally whoever you want for the All-Star game. So, again, that's when you come in with some of these guys that have numbers that aren't necessarily representative because it is completely open season. And if you're determined to get a certain player in, no matter how good of a bad or season they have, you have the ability to do that. So should fans be limited on who they can vote for to kind of corral this in a little bit?
They do have limits on voting. I've done it a few times now just to try to vote. Ben Rice is up behind by 1 million votes, which is just absolutely ridiculous to think about. So Vlad probably is going to be starting the All-Star game, but you get 5 votes per day. So you add it up, though.
But you can still vote for anybody.
You can vote for anybody. Yeah, you can vote for anybody. You get to vote at every position, a starter. So I can imagine Blue Jays fans or Canadians have been hammering home those votes. And when you add it up, look, that's a lot. Canada's a big country, so we're talking about a ton of votes that are going to those guys.
Does the entire country love the Blue Jays that much, though?
Look, they're the only team, right? They're the only team. Now, you could say, like, out on the west coast of Canada, there's probably some people out there that, closer to Seattle, they're probably Mariners fans, right? Or there's probably people that grew up rooting for the Expos that just haven't picked up on the Blue Jays. But the Blue Jays are the only team in Canada, so I feel like a lot of the population out there, if they care about baseball, probably are Blue Jays fans. They have a big fan base out there. When it gets time for the postseason, they show up in full force. So they don't have a problem with their fan base there. I think the voting, though, I think depending on how things play out with who else, because right now this is just the finalists. There's still voting going on for who the starters are going to be. But it is telling that, like, there's a lot of Blue Jays guys. Like George Springer, who does not deserve to be in the All-Star game at all, he's not going to win, but he's a finalist at designated hitter, right? The Blue Jays basically have a guy at every position that is a finalist, which is a big problem in my opinion, because they're also not playing good this year. That's another thing. Like, there are guys that should be rewarded that aren't. So how do you fix fan voting? Well, maybe you just eliminate it. I think that is really the solution here. I like getting the fans in on it, but it's gotten to a point where, like I said before, it's a popularity contest. It's just, that's not the way it should be. I think ultimately it should be kind of like it is for the reserves. Let coaches, players, let the peers of the sport vote for who gets in, because they see it up close and personal better than anyone. And I think they could do a much better job of figuring out who the starter should be based on who is playing well, not, oh, yeah, they represent our team. So, like I'm a Yankees fan, so I'm going to vote for a few Yankees, but
sure,
I'm realistically not voting for Austin Wells or Jazz Chisholm or any of these bums to be going to the All-Star game. I'll vote for Aaron Judge and Ben Rice and Cody Bellinger, and that's it.
Well, you're also a very diehard baseball fan that can recognize who's having a good season and who's not, where let's just say Aaron Judge was having a really, really bad season. There's probably still a contingent of a lot of Yankee fans that would still want to vote for him because of the name recognition.
Yeah,
right?
But that's also part of the problem, Tyler.
Right. And I think that's where Major League Baseball runs into a dilemma here, because while you want the All-Star game to be your representation of the best playing each other, you also want people to watch. So if people are going to vote for the bigger names, well, that means they're probably going to watch those bigger names regardless of what kind of season they're going to be having, which is kind of where you run into the crossroads here of what they could do about this.
Yeah. So I think depending on how the voting plays out here, like if it's just all Blue Jays going to the All-Star game as starters, that's a big problem to me.
Now, do they still have the guarantee of every player from each team? That's still there?
I want to say I think it is.
I don't like that.
I disagree, because see, again, with starters it's fan voting, but reserves it ultimately is the commissioner, the office there, the players, the coaches. Like, I think it's fine, because there typically is at least one player that's having a good enough season, and it's the MLB All-Star game. Like, it'd be kind of weird if your vote, like, you have every team represented except like one or two, right? That would be kind of weird. I've always liked that you can have some representation from every single team, because there's more than enough roster spots, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, somebody from, like, Hunter Goodman from the Rockies. The Rockies aren't having a good season at all, but he's having a great season, hitting over 20 home runs. he's probably going to be the Rockies representative for the All-Star game, right? Like, the Giants will have a representative. Like, all these bad teams, I say the Red Sox, but the Red Sox just swept the Yankees. But the Red Sox had the worst record in the AL before that series against the Yankees. They'll get someone into the All-Star game. I think that's cool that every team gets one representative at least to go.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens, but it's a debate. I feel like this does come up every single year in terms of this process. Again, when you see certain guys like, again, Ernie Clement being the top vote getter when it comes to the American League. Again, not saying he's not deserving of being an all-star, but being the top vote getter certainly surprising. We got another, is it 2 weeks from tomorrow, I believe, when the All-Star game is?
Yeah, 2 weeks from tomorrow.
In Philly this year.
Yes, and voting does pick up for the second round today. So that'll be at 12 o'clock p.m. noon Eastern time. So you can go ahead and vote for more guys, and hopefully a lot of you guys listening, if you decide to vote, don't vote for the Blue Jays. They don't deserve to get in. So
yeah, so there you go. The latest debate when it comes to voting for the MLB All-Star Game. We'll stick with Major League Baseball because that's what our future headline predictions were. Coming up next to wrap up the hour on your Monday here on the Extra Point, Tyler Head and Jack Veltri on the game. right, welcome back in. Extra Point, wrapping up hour number 2. Tyler Head, Jack Veltri with you on your Monday here on The Game. As we do each and every Monday, we recap our future headlines of the weekend for things that we predicted that were going to happen all the way back on Friday, and we stuck with Major League Baseball for both of our predictions, Jack. It was on Friday's show, I believe it was Thursday or Friday show, one of those, where we learned that Carlos Mendoza was being fired by the Mets after they had gotten off to obviously a really bad start this year. They were, I believe, 13 games under 500 when he was fired. We kind of knew that was coming for a while, and you thought that was going to be something that the Mets would carry momentum-wise into the weekend with the change at skipper against the Phillies.
I thought it would be the case, but they ended up losing 2 out of 3. They lost Friday. They won Saturday. They lost Sunday. The thing about those 2 losses, though, is that they were both one-run losses, so that's the difference. And honestly, when you look at Friday's game in particular, did you see the catch that Phillies center fielder Derek Hill made?
Yep.
Oh, my gosh. That Juan Soto hits that ball to right center field, and Derek Hill, who's been a journeyman bouncing around the MLB, made probably one of the best catches I've ever seen. Just full extension, over the wall, home run robbery, takes away a home run from Juan Soto. I mean, one of the best catches I've ever seen, honestly, and great play there. But, yeah, I mean, the Mets camped short. I think the highlight of the weekend, though, was OG Anunoby throwing out the first pitch on Sunday at the Mets game with Jose Reyes catching him. So that was pretty cool. So, but beyond that, yeah, the Mets, rough weekend there.
Yeah, yesterday the Mets were leading 4-3 until Kyle Schwarber hit the home run. It's fifth, sixth inning, whatever inning that was.
30 home runs now this year. He's
first one to 30.
He's insane. And there was I saw, I think, a story or a debate. Who's going to be the first to get to 400? Because him and Bryce Harper are like neck and neck. Like each 20 home runs away to get to 400. Like, if you're a betting man, who's the first to get to 400?
What would you say the difference the numbers are right now?
So Bryce Harper, I think, is at 382. I think Schwarber's at 378. They should be on pace to get close to or at 400 by the end of the year.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'd probably roll with Schwarber just for momentum's sake. He's the first guy to 30 this year. But I also believe the fastest Philly to 30 home runs in a season ever as well. And he's only 4 behind, so that'd be 4 behind Harper. So yeah, I'd probably bet on him if I had to take a guess right now.
Yeah. Now the Braves, what'd they do this weekend?
Yeah. So my prediction was the Braves were going to take 2 out of 3 against the Giants, as they needed something to kind of get themselves a little momentum, going after going through a bit of a rough stretch there. Didn't happen. End up falling in in Saturday and Sunday's game. And if I told you the stat that the Braves went scoreless for 20 straight innings, that probably tells you what you need to know. Between, I believe it was the 5th inning on Friday and then the 8th and 9th inning, the 7th inning on Sunday, they had no runs scored. They scored 2 runs to not get shut out for 2 days in a row in the 8th and 9th inning yesterday, but that was pretty much it. The offense is atrocious right now. You have guys like Austin Riley that are in just an awful slump. Haesung Kim can't hit a ball to save his life. You know what his batting average is?
What?
0.68 or 0.68.
And how many at-bats, though?
That's a good question. He did miss a lot of the early part of the season, but so far this year he has batted.
He's got 73. Yeah,
it's not great.
That's still very bad.
When you're hitting 0.68, that's awful.
Yeah. Now, what is up with Austin Riley this year?
I don't know, man.
Hitting 209, 8 homers, 43 RBIs. Not very good.
I don't get it. He goes through his slumps, but this one's pretty atrocious. And you got your injuries at pitcher. Strider's out again. You haven't gotten Schwellenbach back. Chris Sale had a really good start yesterday that you gave him no run support in, so that's only going to go so far. As I said, the Braves did a really good job of building themselves up some buffer with all those wins early in the season, and it's evaporating quickly because the Phillies now are only back 3 games, and my goodness, by the All-Star break, they could be leading the NL East.
It's crazy to think about. The way the Phillies started off the season, I don't think anyone expected that, right, to where they are now. They're playing great baseball under Don Mattingly. He's done a great job out there with the Phillies as the interim. I personally think he should be the next manager when it's all said and done if this continues. But, yeah, the Braves, you're right, Tyler. the fact they got off to such a hot start to the year, and it's baseball, right? Both our teams going through some struggles right now. The Yankees just had an awful week where they only won one game this week. But, man, it's a long year. Teams go through these stretches all the time where they start out really good. They go through a bit of a slump. Guess what? Every team goes through it at one point or another. Braves are going to be fine. Yankees are going to be fine, I think. But the trade deadline is coming up about a month from now, so that's where I'm sure the Braves are going to have to make some moves, right?
Yeah, probably so. I'm Thopless. I don't think it's committed one way or the other on that from what I've heard, but we'll see what they end up doing. For your case, you just have to avoid Mike Yuva roasting you for what happened this past week.
The good news is the Yankees and Red Sox only play one more time this year. And this happens every year in June. I think they're like 1-18 in their last 19 games at Fenway. So they'll play again in August, and it'll be at Yankee Stadium, so we'll see.
There's your latest from Major League Baseball, and that'll do it for the Extra Point. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour up next here on your Monday on the Game. 11 o'clock on your Monday morning. Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Just me today, guys. Wes enjoying some vacation time with his family. Chris turned 40 years old, by the way, yesterday. So if you see Chris, wish him I guess at this point, happy belated birthday. But he'll be back in tomorrow, and we'll get the rest of the week. Should be back to normal with both those guys. But for me today, just hanging out with you from 11 until 12. A lot of things to get into. We'll get back into what Brad Crawford is predicting for South Carolina's win total for 2026, as well as what he has to say about the rest of the SEC, as well as, again, we're in the season of list and predictions and all that kind of stuff. So, again, we'll take a look at that coming up here in just a minute. But just because Wes and Chris are not here does not mean that trivia comes to a stop. We are 68 days away from South Carolina kicking things off against Kent State, and I do have a 68-day trivia question. However, I'm going to ask for a little bit of your help. Since I already know the answer to the question, I can't answer it. So you, the listener, can text in at 803-404-6100. The first person to answer the question right will get the opportunity to award a point to either Wes or Chris in our trivia challenge as we get set, or as we close in on the start of the season. For a reminder, Chris currently leads the standings at 7.5 to Wes's 4. So if you answer the question correctly on the Firehouse Subs text line at 803-404-6100, you will get the chance to award either Wes or Chris the point, depending on who gets it right first. So here we go. Again, get those text and fingers ready at 803-404-6100. Today's trivia question is, what uniform feature was absent from the South Carolina uniforms in 1968 that has been featured every year since? 803-404-6100. Let me know your answer. First person to answer it correctly will get to choose Wes or Chris in terms of who they give that point to. And it's a timely topic, right? In terms of talking about uniforms and stuff like that. Given what this week is, we are only 2 days away from the calendar officially flipping over to July, and that means that South Carolina will officially enter in to the Nike era. No more Under Armour. All that stuff's going to be gone. If you haven't bought your Under Armour stuff in the fire sales yet, go ahead and do it, because we're switching to Nike coming up on Wednesday. By the way, we already have a texter with the correct answer, and the correct answer is the chicken mascot on the helmet logo. 1968. There was no chicken logo, Gamecock logo, on the helmet. They had the Block C, which, funny enough, is a helmet and a uniform set they threw back to a couple of years ago, a couple times in 2022 and once in 2023, I believe. But that was the last time, the last full season that did not feature a Gamecock on the helmet. And that's obviously been corrected since then. There's always been a Gamecock in some form or fashion on the helmet since 1968. So congratulations, texter. Let me know whose point you want to give that to, Wes or Chris. Again, Chris leading by 3.5 points over Wes as of right now. So Wes could use some help if you want to be generous and throw him that way. But, yeah, that was the last season that went through a full year at least where Carolina did not have the Gamecock logo on the helmet. And also, and this is where, again, we miss our friend Tommy Moody so dearly all the time. But this is kind of one of those days where a question like that, I could ask Tommy, like, hey, why did they decide to take the Gamecock logo off the helmet? It seems crazy, right? Like for how important that logo is to the uniform and obviously to the university. They decided back in 1968 that they were going to remove that. They quickly realized their error, and since then there has been a Gamecock on the helmet since 1968 and on. Again, they did throw back to those 68 helmets just a couple of years ago, but that's been out of the rotation for a little while now. But what I was saying, and again, thanks to the texter there for getting that answer right. I'll hit you up. Okay, he does want to give his point to Wes. He wants to tighten things up there, so I'll add it. So that means Wes is now only down 2.5 points, with the score is 7.5 to 5 in our trivia countdown, a challenge, and we'll get them back in here coming up tomorrow, and I'll let them know that you were generous enough to give Wes that point there. But I bring this up, and again, I say this is very timely when it comes to this question being today's trivia because of the switch to Nike coming up on Wednesday. And programming note, in celebration of this, coming up on Wednesday, both from 9 until noon and from 3 until 6. So Jay Phillips going to be hanging out there as well. We're going to be out at Gamecock Traditions on Sunset Boulevard in Lexington, 5134 Sunset Boulevard. Again, it's across the street from the Target Shopping Center over there in Lexington to celebrate the release of South Carolina's Nike merch, right? Again, it's a brand new era. T-shirts, hats, jackets, jerseys, all that kind of stuff I imagine will be out there, and it's going to be really cool to not only to see it in person, because, again, this is something we've been dreaming about and talking about for a long time. It was right before the season started a year ago that it was announced they're going to be making the switch to Nike, which was met by approval from pretty much everyone, because, again, Nike is the standard when it comes to apparel, not just in college football, but college athletics in general. So to see that stuff in person on day number one is definitely going to be very cool. Probably going to have to cop myself at least a shirt or something like that while we're hanging out there. Again, looking forward to that coming up on Wednesday at Gamecock Traditions. And by all means, come out and see us. That's another thing I'm interested to see too, is just like the rush, right? Because again, this is something we've been anticipating for so long. With South Carolina is switching from Under Armour. I got here and started this job back in the December of 2022. And, like, I've always been a fan of Under Armour stuff. I got a lot of Under Armour stuff in my closet, but it became very quick. It became evident very quickly to me this fan base was done with Under Armour. Again, that's 4 years ago now, and they were ready to move on. Again, you had to wait for the contract to come to an end and all that kind of stuff, but everybody was very happy and excited when it was announced they were going to be switching to Nike. We still don't know what the football jerseys and stuff are going to look like. We'll get to that certainly coming up here very soon. But I'm so intrigued to see what, like, the rush. And again, we're going to be out there basically right when the store opens coming up on Wednesday. So I'm intrigued to see how many people are there to grab that stuff immediately, to be the first of their work group, friend group, whatever it may be, to be repping the South Carolina Nike merch. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Again, looking forward to seeing all you guys out there coming up on Wednesday, again, from 9 until noon, be me, Wes, and Chris. And then Wednesday afternoon, you can also hang out with Jay Phillips from 3 until 6 as again, it should be a full day of a lot of shopping for Gamecock fans as everybody wants to get outfitted in the new Nike apparel. And we talked about this thing last week. There was the commit the other day that had the Nike jersey, but it looked like the same one that was there for the announcement last fall, which very quickly we learned, like, hey, this isn't what the uniform's going to look like. It was a mock-up, and really it was just kind of an Under Armour jersey with a Nike logo slapped on it. So we know something's going to look different, something's going to change to what we don't know. How much does Nike want to really mold and shift what Carolina's been doing? Because I do think, like, obviously the base of the uniform is good. Obviously the colors are good. The Carolina across the chest and all that kind of stuff. The Gamecock logo on the helmet, which was the size increased on that last year, which was actually off the tails of the 1980s throwbacks we had, 2 years ago now, which, hey, if I'm putting in a request to Nike, I'd really love to see those things continue here with Carolina, because I thought those looked really, really good. No, you don't wear them every single game because they're throwbacks, obviously, but I wouldn't mind having a game or two each season with those, and hopefully Nike will keep those around. The debate, I guess, comes in is, okay, one, can you match the colors? And that's one thing that I've seen people bring up more than anything else on our text line and stuff like that when it comes to Nike taking over is, hey, get the garnet, specifically the garnet color, right? Get the garnet color right. Now, Nike in their past has messed up some colors at times. If you remember back in 2014, now they were already the outfitter for Florida State, but they had those weird, like, mustardy yellow type of helmets that wasn't the, like, was it? Is it green? Is it green the color for Florida State? Don't quote me on that. But they'd messed up one of those colors. They've done it for some other schools, I believe, as well. So get the colors right is like priority number one, because if you get the colors wrong, then that screws everything else up. But get the colors right, and then go from there. Number font, letter font, all that kind of stuff. Will Nike do something with that? We don't know. There was a run of a while there for a lot of Nike schools where they were getting their own number font, their own letter font, and all that kind of stuff to kind of give it their own unique flavor. The University of Georgia had that with what they called Bulldog Bold. When they switched over to all that in 2013, Florida still uses their unique number font with more kind of a hexagon type of pattern in a lot of ways on some of their numbers. You may not even notice these things. I'm a uniform nerd, so those kind of things do stand out to me. So will they give South Carolina a flair of something like that? I don't know. How many different uniforms are you going to have? We'll see as well. Carolina obviously has their all garnet stuff, all black, all white. Do you bring back like a gray or something along those lines that you had years and years ago? I don't know either. Again, had throwbacks factor in the mix. We'll see. As Nike typically does, I imagine there'll be some kind of formal introduction, right? It's not just going to be, hey, we'll see what the uniforms look like. When you kick off against Kent State in week number one, there, I imagine, will be some kind of press event. If nothing else, they'll allow Justin King and the media team over there to put together some kind of hype reveal video, something along those lines. They're going to do it up. Nike does not do anything on a small scale, and I imagine they'll really lean into unveiling all the uniforms and stuff for South Carolina, not just in football, but all the other sports as the year goes along, to really lean into, again, what's been a welcome change for this fan base for a very long time. Now, does that translate to wins? I don't know. I've always been a believer of when you look good, you feel good, and there is something to be said about Nike apparel being the leader in most categories when it comes to outfitting pretty much every single sport. And if that can generate a little more juice and a little more buzz for the football team and all these other teams to lead them to more success, I'm here for it. Will it? We'll obviously have to see, but it is kind of nice, especially as we go into what are such critical years for Shane Beamer, for Lamont Paris. Obviously, we're getting the Kevin Schnall era started coming up in the spring. Having a nice coat of paint, so to speak, on you with new uniforms and stuff like that can maybe just breathe new life into it as well. I don't know. We'll see. Excited for it. Excited to see what Nike rolls out. And obviously, again, excited to see all the apparel, T-shirts, hats, jerseys, jackets, shoes. I don't know what all Gamecock Tradition is going to have out there, but obviously they are your source when it comes to that kind of stuff, and excited to be out there with all that apparel and all of you snatching it up and buying it off the shelves coming up on a Wednesday for the official Nike launch as we turn the calendar over to July 1st. That's going to be a lot of fun. We'll talk more about that, obviously, as we get into it on Wednesday, and we can really kind of lean into the Nike and uniform stuff even more then from 9 until noon out there at Gamecock Traditions on Sunset in Lexington. But coming up next, we're going to get back into what Brad Crawford is predicting for South Carolina as far as wins and losses this upcoming season. We'll debate on if it's acceptable and also debate on if his path to that number is realistic or not, because there's an interesting little quirk at the end of the season that I'm not sure if I agree with or not. We'll dive into that coming up next. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head along with you on your Monday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler along with you here on your Monday on the Game. How many games is South Carolina going to win this upcoming season? That is a question we'll continue to ask. That's a question we'll continue to debate. Well, not just up until the start of the season. We'll certainly give our predictions here on the game right before the season starts as we get through, preseason camp and all that kind of stuff, where hopefully you're not dealing with any more major injuries or anything along those lines. And certainly as the season goes along, we'll be tracking where Carolina can get as far as total wins go, as well as, again, the bare minimum in this entire fan base's mind, rightfully so, is at least 6. At the very least, get yourself back to a bowl game. I know Coach Beamer set the expectations pretty darn high. November, he said, hey, we're expected to be in the mix, and we're going to be watching ourselves on the Tuesday show to see where we factor in the rankings and all that kind of stuff. That's great, and I hope we get there, and I hope we're having those kind of conversations coming up in November. At the very least, get yourself 6 wins. Play a 13th game somewhere. It could be the Liberty Bowl. It could be the Gasparilla Bowl. I don't care. I don't want to be sitting in December with nothing to plan for, nothing to do as far as Gamecock football, because quite frankly, that sucks. And this will be my 4th full season covering this team for this radio station. 2 of the years, no bowl game, right? 23, no bowl game. 25, no bowl game. Here's hoping, and fingers crossed, even year Beamer comes through, and we'll get back to having another good and solid season. Well, while we won't give our predictions on wins and loss total until before the season starts, our guy Brad Crawford over at CBS Sports, as so many people out there are going to be doing over the next couple of weeks and months, offered his predictions for the entire SEC. And we'll get into the other teams in the SEC coming up in a minute, because I do think there's some interesting quirks in terms of things that he is predicting to happen this upcoming season. But let's zero in on South Carolina to start things off with. First off, it's got him going 7-5 overall, 4-5 in conference play. You give me no other context right now and say Carolina's going to win 7 games and they'll be in a bowl game somewhere. You don't even have to tell me where. I'll say, okay, you know what? That's a step in the right direction. That's a 3-win improvement from the season prior. Again, you're going back to a bowl game, which is objective number 1 for most people. Considering the talent level on this team, only 7 wins, not going to be acceptable by a lot of people, but I think that is enough to likely keep Beamer on as your head coach going into 27 and beyond and all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying you have to agree with that, because I know a lot of you don't. I know a lot of you are in that boat of, hey, we should be winning 9-10 games with this type of talent, being in the playoff mix, and anything below that is disappointment. You're not wrong for thinking that, but I think about this from the context of, like, how does Jeremiah Donati view this? I think 7-5 going to a bowl, that's probably enough to say, all right, we took a step back in 25, we're back on track, and let's keep this train rolling. That being said, the pathway that Brad Crawford has to 7-5 is pretty interesting. So he has wins against Kent State, Towson, no surprise. I think everybody outside of maybe those 2 fan bases is predicting South Carolina to win those games. And Mississippi State, yeah, fair. I could see that. Kentucky, yeah, again, those are looked at as 2 of the easier teams in the SEC to help them get to 4 wins. Tennessee, hey, they're coming in off 3rd Saturday in October. First time they've been here since the upset back in 2022. All right. And then you got Georgia and Clemson as well to wrap up the regular season and get them to 7 wins. Clemson, who the heck knows what Clemson's going to be this year, right? They had the most returning production of any team a season ago, and they ended up having more draft picks than wins overall. So that's very up in the air of what that team's going to look like, what they're going to be by the time you roll into Memorial Stadium at the at the end of the regular season, where hopefully you've already locked up a bowl bid at that point in time, and don't have to go in there playing for your life to play in some kind of bowl at that point in time. The Georgia thing's interesting to me, though, and not just from the standpoint of Carolina beating Georgia, like that. Sure, that can happen. They upset a very good Georgia team back in 2019 in Sanford Stadium. That was the last time they beat them. So it's not that part that surprises me necessarily. It's what's in the loss category to coincide with this, because losses to, again, this is per Brad Crawford of CBS, At Alabama, okay, yeah, I could see that. At Florida, tough place to play. At Oklahoma, sure, that's a team that was in the playoff a year ago. A&M, again, a team in the playoff a year ago. But the fifth one's interesting. The fifth one is at Arkansas, which is the game right before Georgia and Clemson to wrap up the regular season. So he's looking at this, and to go to Brad's specific prediction here, he's basically kind of looking back on the 2022 season and seeing something similar where he says, projected at 5-5 overall after a stunning loss at Arkansas, Beamer keeps his job by doing the unthinkable and upsetting the Bulldogs at Williams-Brice before beating his in-state rival away from Columbia. So again, he's kind of taking that same script from 2022 where Carolina looked awful on the road at the Swamp. Maybe one of the worst, if not the worst, football games of the Beamer era, where again you only scored 6 points on a trick play on special teams, and Florida ends up beating you by 3 touchdowns. There was nobody in the world was giving them a chance to beat Tennessee, let alone Clemson, 2 teams that were destined at that point in time, seemingly for the college football playoff. And of course, we know what Carolina did, put off 2 of the biggest upsets in program history, and we still talk about them to this day. And yes, again, that's precedent. That's something that's happened in the past, but I just find it really, really hard to believe that Carolina goes on the road to beat Arkansas and follows that up with the win against Georgia, right? For one, I think Carolina's a better team than Arkansas anyway, and this isn't knocking on Ryan Silverfield. I think he's got a long, long climb to get Arkansas back to respectability. In fact, that is, Bill and I talked about this the other day, that's like maybe looked at as the easiest game in the conference for Carolina in terms of what we know about those teams and what that matchup's going to be. That is not a loss I want to see this team have, right? Those other losses, sure, understandable. I could see pathways where those kind of things could happen, considering how good those teams are. You want to talk about an upset fan base? You lose to Arkansas before even if these theoretical wins against Georgia and Clemson happen, you'd have a lot of very upset people. I don't see that as a pathway for this team unless well, I guess we got to have this caveat every single time. Unless Arkansas and Ryan Silverfield are the next Indiana and Kurt Cignetti, right? I don't think that's going to happen, but hey, stranger things have happened in college football. Rosters can flip, but what I think I know about Arkansas right now is I think Carolina's a better team, and I just don't think going on the road to them is a game you should lose. So if I'm going to go 7-5, which that's not my record prediction, but if I was going to go that path, I'd probably flip those 2. I'd say you win at Arkansas and then lose to Georgia and beat Clemson. Because Georgia typically playing its best football late in the season. In the years where Carolina, again, they did, is it October? Yeah, it was like mid-October when they beat them back in 2019. But they're typically playing their best football late in the season. So I would probably flip those in terms of if I was going to go with 7-5 for South Carolina, like Brad Crawford ended up doing here. That being said, again, aside from the the specific wins and specific losses, I think 7-5 is very believable. Again, the acceptability from the fan base, that's debatable. Also depends on how you lose those games. If you're going to Alabama and losing on last-second field goal, you go to overtime with Florida, you're in a tight 7-point game with Oklahoma, that's one thing. If you're losing all these games by 20 points, that's a different story, and that would be a different conversation in terms of where this program is at. But if these games are competitive, hopefully you're not blowing leads in the fourth quarter and things like that. But if these games are competitive and you're losing tight ones, that's something that you can at least say, okay, at least you're in these games and you're not miles and miles away from these other teams. So we'll see. Again, this is going to be an ongoing debate, ongoing topic as we close in on the season. But again, we're in the seasonal list right now, and the national talking heads and writers like Brad Crawford going to give their opinion on this. Again, I just don't know if that's quite the pathway to 7-5, if that's what South Carolina ends up doing or not. But he didn't just do it for South Carolina; he did it for the entire SEC. We'll get into his other predictions across the conference and what stands out to me from Brad Crawford of CBS Sports predicting wins and losses for teams in the SEC coming up next. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Monday here on The Game. All right, welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head along with you here on your Monday on the game. Again, I anticipate both Wes and Chris being back tomorrow. Wes taking a few days off, Chris doing some stuff for his birthday. So we'll get back in here coming up tomorrow as we wrap up the month of June, believe it or not. Wednesday, July 1st, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show. Again, we'll be out there at Gamecock Traditions on Sunset in Lexington from 9 until noon, as well as Jay Phillips being out there from 3 until 6 to celebrate the official start of the Nike era when it comes to South Carolina athletics. And you can come by and grab your T-shirts and hats and all that kind of stuff and hang out with us all morning long. So looking forward to being out there. And as, of course, we get closer to the start of the season, we're talking about predictions. We're talking about projections and all those kind of things. And right now we're focusing on Brad Crawford of CBS Sports and his predictions for wins and losses of every team in the SEC, how their seasons are going to shake out, and what their ultimate destinations are in the postseason. And went through what he said about South Carolina, 7-5. Again, I think that record is believable. Maybe the pathway he has to get in there, we'll see. But regardless, I think 7-5 is a very doable record for South Carolina. Even though, as I said, I know it's not going to be acceptable for the entire fan base. But in terms of 1 year to the next, going from 4 wins to 7 wins is a pretty sizable jump. So we'll see if that comes true for Carolina. As far as the rest of the SEC, in terms of teams with double-digit wins, he has 3 of them: Texas, Georgia, and LSU. He has Georgia and Texas once again squaring off the SEC title as the top 2 teams in the conference. Again, without having divisions anymore. And let me just double check on this really quick, but I don't believe those 2 teams play in the regular season. So let's see here. Georgia, and no, they do not. So that'll be the first time those 2 teams meet. For the record, he does also have Texas winning the SEC championship and being the number 2 overall seed in the college football playoff. Again, it wouldn't surprise anybody, right? Like Texas last year technically kind of took a bit of a step back. Again, if they beat Florida in the Swamp, they're definitely in the college football playoff. But, again, another talented roster. Arch Manning going into year number 2 is going to be, as a full-time starter, is going to be very intriguing because, again, we place such lofty expectations on his shoulders because of his family, because of, where he comes from and all that kind of stuff. And, yeah, that first game against, Ohio State was rough, and he had some up-and-down moments, but he settled in and ended up being fine. Was he the Heisman superstar, number 1 overall pick? No, but he ended up having a perfectly fine season. The question becomes okay, how do you build off that, right? Do you end up being that quarterback we thought we were going to be, or not maybe all of us thought, but a lot of people thought you were going to be going in to last season and building off of year number 1 and all that kind of stuff. So it wouldn't surprise people if Texas is the top team in the SEC. And same thing with Georgia, again, just perennially towards the top of the conference in the playoff, in an expanded playoff now and all that kind of stuff. After that's kind of where things rotate a little bit, and it's interchangeable in terms of teams that you think are going to be in that mix. And there's perhaps no more polarizing team in college football this year than LSU, with all the drama, so to speak, of the offseason. Really before this offseason even began, with poaching Lane Kiffin and all that kind of stuff. Look, they went out there, they acquired a ton of talent. They got Sam Leavitt from Arizona State. Like, this is a roster that should be good enough to compete for a playoff spot. Again, if Lane Kiffin can get Ole Miss into a college football playoff, no reason to think that he can't do the same thing at LSU. Though he's oddly enough kind of been trying to temper some expectations a little bit. Like, I don't know, guys, year number 1, got to give me some time. That fan base is not going to give you time, Lane Kiffin. You better come in there and hit the ground running, get this team in that playoff mix immediately, or fans are going to get very, very upset. Now, that being said, he does have them winning 10 regular season games. The 2 losses, almost kind of Lane Kiffin specials, as Brad Crawford has LSU losing at Ole Miss. No surprise there. If there is any game right now that I would be willing to place a lot on and say, you know what, I feel pretty confident in terms of high-profile matchups. I feel pretty confident about one side winning the other. The emotion that's going to be in Vaught Hemingway Stadium for LSU coming to town early in the season, yeah, that's going to be one. That's going to be a powder keg of emotions ready to explode. Again, you get Trinidad Chambliss back for Ole Miss. A lot of guys back from the team last year. That's still going to be a very good team. And I just think all those factors, Lane Kiffin's going to need military escorts in and out of the stadium there. I very much see Ole Miss win that game. But again, that's not ultimately detrimental to LSU's season. He also has them losing to Tennessee. Again, funny enough, Lane Kiffin special. The two teams that he's been a head coach at in the SEC are the two teams that he has, LSU losing to, both on the road, by the way, this upcoming year, where I'm sure he'll be met with a very, very warm welcome by both the fans in Ole Miss as well as the fans in Knoxville. But if that happens, that's still a great season, and that's still enough to get you in the college ball playoff at likely, 10-2 there. Would include big wins, again, per Brad Crawford against Alabama, against Tennessee, teams like that would bolster that resume quite a bit. And he also has Ole Miss coming in to the college football playoff as the fourth team out of the SEC. Only 4 teams getting in per Brad Crawford, with Ole Miss getting in at 9-3. This is where I maybe disagree a little bit, and it stems from the way he has them getting to 9-3. So he has losses to Texas, Georgia, and Oklahoma. Hey, there's nothing wrong with losing to those teams. Those are 3 very good teams. 2 of them in the playoff a year ago, and obviously Texas in the playoff all the way to the semifinals the year prior. So 3 very good programs that he would have Ole Miss losing to, but it's the timing of when those losses happen that makes this kind of interesting, because they play those 3 games over a 4-week stretch. So they'll get at Texas on October 24th, Auburn on Halloween, they host Georgia on November 7th, and then at Oklahoma on November 14th. If I remember correctly, I believe the first college football playoff rankings will come out that Tuesday following Halloween. So you'd have 1 loss at that point in time, and then according to Brad Crawford, you'd follow that up with 2 more losses, and then your only 2 games after that are Wofford and Mississippi State, 2 teams that we don't expect to bolster the resume too much there at the very end. So I think as quality of opponents as Ole Miss will be losing to, I don't know if 3 losses in 4 weeks, as good as those teams are, is enough to guarantee a team in at 9-3. Again, we saw Vanderbilt get left out a year ago with 10 wins. Texas got left out with 9 wins. Like, you get me to a 10-win threshold, I feel pretty confident. Again, besides Vanderbilt, I feel pretty confident in SEC teams getting in. 9-3, though, that's where the debate gets a little bit more interesting, and I just don't think with the way this schedule's crafted, that would end up working out for Ole Miss if Brad Crawford's prediction does indeed come true in terms of 9-3, and when those 3 losses do end up happening. Also has Vanderbilt at 6-6. That's kind of the debate everybody has, right? Is, man, this has been a wild couple seasons for Vanderbilt, Diego Pavia mania and all that kind of stuff. The upset of Alabama and all that. Played Alabama tight last year, lost to Texas as well. But now you lose him. You lose Eli Stowers. You lose a lot of talent on that team. Do you revert back to the norm, right? Do you revert back to being little old Vanderbilt again? You bring in Jared Curtis, 5-star superstar freshman quarterback. We'll see, right? He's getting a lot of hype. I haven't seen him play a snap of college football to know yet or not. That being said, Vanderbilt being 6-6, by their standard for a long time, still is good, because they were missing bowl games for a long period of time, going 2-10 in Clark Lee's early tenure and all that kind of stuff. So even going 6-6 doesn't mean the same for Vanderbilt as a program as it does to other schools. But Vanderbilt obviously wants to capitalize off the momentum they had these past couple of years, and Clark Lee is a very good coach. We'll see, especially as they have more to spend resource-wise in the portal, starting with Jared Curtis, if that translates to them continuing on and building off the momentum of the past couple seasons or not. Overall, in the SEC, Brad Crawford has 13 of the 16 teams reaching bowl eligibility and getting to that 6-win mark. The 3 teams not making bowls, Kentucky, Arkansas, and Mississippi State. I mean, if you're going to probably poll people, and we got media days coming up here in a little under a month's time, if you're asking people what they think the bottom 3 teams in the SEC are, that's probably it. 2 of those teams with new head coaches in Kentucky and Arkansas. And Mississippi State, we'll see. They did take a significant step forward last year from year 1 to year 2 under Jeff Lebby, but I just don't know if everybody's quite ready to believe in them yet or not. By the way, if you're wondering, he also has South Carolina going to the Texas Bowl. So if you want to make the trip out to Houston and NRG Stadium, well, there you go. We'll see if that ends up coming true or not. But there's a look at Brad Crawford's projections for all 16 teams in the SEC wins and losses and postseason destinations for 2026. And again, we'll continue to debate these things until we know for sure what actually ends up happening with the 2026 season. We'll come back, wrap up the hour. How do we do on buy or sell? Well, I'm the only one here, but I'll go through it anyway and tell you how Chris and I did as we wrap up the hour. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head on your Monday here on The Game. All right, welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head wrapping up the hour here on your Monday on the game. We'll let you know, our friends at Crescent Construction got some money to give away. Remember during the baseball season we were doing the Crescent Construction Grand Slam contest, or if Gamecocks had a Grand Slam, then, well, we gave away some money. We did that early in the season, and then, well, they just stopped hitting Grand Slams. So we still have $325 burning a hole in our pockets here, thanks to our friends over at Crescent Construction. And, well, we got to give it away. So we've reopened the Crescent Construction, what we now call Grand Slam Baseball Coach Hire Contest. So just go online to 1075thegame.com and click on the Crescent Construction Grand Slam giveaway and register to win, again, $325 from our friends over at Crescent Construction as we celebrate the hiring of Kevin Schnall and give you a little bit of money if you do end up winning that contest. So Friday, as do on the show, always do a little bit of buy or sell. It was just me and Chris because Wes was out of town. Speaking with baseball, that was actually question number one. The Braves would still be up at least 4 games on the Phillies by showtime on Monday. I am sad to report that is not the case. The Braves, what at one point was a pretty significant lead in the NL East, has now dwindled down to just 3 games as they dropped 2 of 3 against San Francisco over the weekend. The Braves offense has gone missing in action. Talked about this in the last hour with Jack. Austin Riley's in a slump. Hyun Kim can't hit the ball to save his life. You got other injuries. Ronald Acuña's out right now. You're rotating guys at catcher. Just nothing's going right. And when you go roughly 20 innings without scoring between the midway point of Friday's game, which the Braves did win, and then the last couple of innings of yesterday's game to round out the series, that's usually not going to get it done. And the Braves are in a tough place right now. Chris sold on that and got it right. I bought on that being the optimistic Braves fan. And unfortunately was wrong. They're back in action, by the way, tomorrow, taking on the Cardinals at 7:15. Watch that game on Braves Vision. Also had some wrestling going on over the weekend. Night of Champions in Saudi Arabia. Trick Williams defending his United States Championship against Ricky Saints. The question was, would Trick Williams win the match cleanly? Not would he win or lose. Would he win the match cleanly? I just thought with Little Yachty on the outside and those kind of things, there could be some shenanigans to assist Trick Williams in the win. Didn't end up happening. Trick Williams wins clean 1-2-3 and keeps on rolling with his title defense. Chris did get that right as he bought and I sold. Again, I thought that maybe you would have some funny stuff happen with this being title defense number 3, I believe, for Trick Williams since winning the title at WrestleMania, but doesn't end up happening there. Switching over to the World Cup. As we wrapped up the group stage over the weekend, going into the weekend, there was but one team that had not scored a single goal as of yet. That was Panama. They had one more game, inconsequential. They weren't going to get themselves into the knockout round, but could at least make themselves feel better by scoring a goal against England on Saturday. It ended up happening. Lose that game 2-0. So Panama gets sent packing as the only team in the World Cup, out of all the teams in the group stage, to not score a single goal. I kind of figured, and Chris and I both ended up selling on this, so we got that right in terms of will they score at least one goal against England, because England was very upset with themselves and how they played against, I believe it was Ghana in their prior game, saying they shouldn't have ended up tying with them. So there's a little bit of anger on their mind. They played like it and ended up picking up the 2-0 victory as they advance into the knockout round, which is already underway right now. And America, of course, plays on Wednesday, taking on Bosnia. Last one from Friday. Scottie Scheffler had gone 12 straight PGA Tour events without winning, his longest such drought since 2023. Would that streak end at the Travelers over the weekend? We had to wait until earlier on this morning to find out. So he and Victor Hovland end up getting into a playoff after tying at the end of 4 rounds yesterday. There was a weather delay of about an hour and a half over the weekend up there in Connecticut, or yesterday up there in Connecticut, which did not allow adequate light for them to play that final that playoff round yesterday. So this morning, got up bright and early, 9 a.m. They went out there on the 18th hole and did it over again. Scottie Scheffler had a lot of trouble with his short game over the weekend, was tasked with about a 4 to 5 foot putt to keep things rolling, and another playoff hole ends up ringing out and missing it, and Victor Hovland ends up winning the Travelers Championship to extend Scotty Scheffler's streak without winning a PGA Tour event to 13 straight events. So Chris was able to sell on that and get that one correct. As again, he's in the mix. He's finishing well. He's just not coming home with the trophy, but I don't imagine that streak will be lasting too much longer there. So that'll do it for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Coming up next, it's halftime show with, hey, guess what? Me and Captain Dave as your Monday rolls along here in the game.